I had the surgery on a Thursday, and the Friday night the surgeon came to the hospital, and not in the best bedside manner in hindsight because I was on my own. And he said, well, the pathology's come through and it is the most aggressive breast cancer there is, and I think it's probably going to be terminal. We'll send you for testing and it's probably going to be elsewhere in your body. And if we talk about vulnerability, that's the moment in my life where I just was at my most vulnerable, and everything just comes crashing down and you think, well, that's it. There was nothing that anybody at that point could say or do that was going to make anything any better. It's kind of a madness. You try to think, well, what if it's not bad news? But you just keep coming back to it's going to be bad news. When you've had a medical professional indicate to you, and I made the mistake of doing the Dr. Google thing, and an 8 centimetre tumour with that much lymph node involvement is almost always likely to be spread into bones or lungs or brain, and that's where the terminal aspect comes in. We went saw this to the doctor the Tuesday afternoon, my husband and I, and the surgeon had come straight from surgery and hadn't had time to read the reports. So he was standing in front of me reading it, and I remember just staring at his face, trying to read what he was reading, trying to see if it was going to be a good thing or a bad thing. And he just sort of went like that and went, "It's all clear." So that really was, if you talk about turning points in your life, that's a turning point, because everybody was anticipating that it wouldn't be clear. But it was. Obviously it doesn't mean and everything's going to be fine now. It just means that they could treat me with an intent to cure me. Doesn't mean that I could be cured, and in fact at this point I'm still in remission, so not considered cured, but I'm still here 4 years later, and if it had gone the other way I wouldn't be. I think vulnerability is something that I've actually, I don't know if I've learned or if it's come to me as I've become older. I think when probably in sort of my 20s and 30s, early 30s, I never showed any vulnerability. I think I was pretty hard, often really emotionless. And I think it took real tragedy in my life to that I could open myself up to being vulnerable. And I think it's having opened myself up to being vulnerable that has actually allowed me to be a happier person and to be more comfortable in who I am and to be more accepting of myself. I met my now husband sort of later on. I was 36 when we met, and at that point we decided pretty well straight away, yeah, we're going to be together and we'll start to have kids. And unfortunately that kind of didn't roll the way that you would think it should roll, and I ended up having 4 miscarriages, and that's something that shapes you as a person, I think. How could it not? And so that were really very traumatic years, but we were really fortunate to get one healthy child out of that who's now 8. You don't talk about pregnancy until you're 12 weeks because that's considered the safe zone. And so we lose these babies before the 12-week mark. You grieve in private. It's a secret. You have a sense of shame attached to it because things aren't supposed to go that way. There must be something wrong with your body. I must have done something wrong. Why can everybody else have these babies and I can't? And I had a guy at work come to me and say, look, you know, I just wanted to let you know that we lost babies as well, and it was just so traumatic. And you realise, and my husband had the same experience, you realise that there's a whole secret society of people that have experienced miscarriage, but because somehow in society we have a sense of shame attached to it, we don't talk about it. I don't think I'll ever get past losing those babies. It's not something I dwell on, but I think it's something that I'll always carry with me. And I think when I started writing the blog, I started off and I was holding stuff back and I was using humour a lot. And, you know, that's kind of what got me an audience because people liked it. But that's always been a bit of a cover. You know, it's very easy to be off the cuff, you know, sarcastic, funny. But it was when I actually started revealing more of what had actually happened and being really honest about how I felt, that people started really responding. Because I was opening myself up and people could see that it does take a bravery, I suppose. And bravery is a word in cancer circles people hate. I don't want anybody to think I'm brave, but there is a bravery in going, all right, I'm just going to expose these feelings. I've never said this out loud to anybody. Now when I write something that I feel is quite revealing of myself, it feels fantastic and I don't mind who reads it. I thought, you know, it's time to really, because the physical side of having had a breast removed, and I haven't had reconstruction, so I've got a completely concave chest on one side and the scars are fairly significant, but I wanted to use the scar metaphor because a lot of the scars are, of course, not physical. And so I said to my husband one night, right, I'm going to write about scars, but I'm going to need you to take a photo of me without my top on. Because when you're 45, what you really want to do is get your gear off and get your photo on the internet. And so I put the photo up and press publish and thought, oh, you know, here we go. And the first comment I got was somebody saying, you really have beautiful skin. And I thought, you know, that's the thing, is that people, they're not necessarily looking to be horrible or to find the negative. You can't assume that that's going to be the case. There will be the negative, of course, but that was just fantastic. And that post got shared a lot by sort of other fairly significant bloggers. So I think that was at the point where I went, it's all out there now. You know, in that post I talked about, you know, living with the scars of all of these things that happen to you physically and emotionally. And so that kind of was the crossroads at which I just went, it's going to be all out there now, and if I feel comfortable writing about it, I'm going to write about it. I like myself now because of that vulnerability. I think... And I'm expressing myself in ways that I had never expressed myself before. I just wouldn't have been game to. And it's amazing that I've lost all of these things, but then gained so much. I do struggle. You know, there's a lot of physical struggle. Probably not as much mental struggle as there was, because time has allowed me to kind of move on from that. So I'm not saying that I'm living in this nirvana of, you know, life's great and, you know, everything's unicorns, but attempting to take what you've got and make the most of it.